Hello everyone, welcome to Positron Academy's new Journal Club video series. And in this series of video lecture, we'll talk about some recent advancements and recent research in the field of nuclear medicine and its related disciplines. So today's topic of discussion is on a paper published by this group of author over here, and the topic of discussion is on F18 FDG-induced DNA damage, chromosomal aberrations, and toxicity in V79 lung fibroblast cells. So before we go deep inside this paper, let us have a brief overview about the positron emitting radionuclides. So if we look at this chart over here, or the graph over here, between number of protons and number of neutrons, and these nucleides in black are those nucleides which are stable nucleate, but the others are those nucleides which are unstable. So what it does, to get to a state of stability, it emits radiation. It can be either in the form of alpha radiation, beta radiation, or any other radiation process to get to a state of stability. Fine. So those in this orange one are those nucleides which are decaying by means of positron emission. So these are those nucleides which are decaying by means of positron emission. So what actually goes wrong with these nucleides? These nucleides have more number of protons than neutrons. So what it does, basically it converts a proton to a neutron, and during this conversion process it emits a positron along with a neutrino. But now the question is, this positron released by this given nucleate has a defined amount of energy. Fine. So what effect these positron have on our body, and whether this positron can cause double strand breaks are the major question of discussion, because once your positron or those radionuclide has caused double strand breaks, so it can lead to cell death also. So we need to study what role this positron have on our cells. Fine. So now if you look at this nucleate over here, so that's an positron emitting radionuclide, for example F18, and it has more protons than neutrons, and to get to a state of stability it converts one of its proton to a neutron, and along with releases a positron and a neutrino. And this positron interacts with the matter in two different ways. The first phase is about ionization. Fine. So as the positron passes through the matter, it interacts with the atomic electrons by electrical interactions, and as the positron moves along, it pulls out the electron and produces ionization. And during each interaction with an electron by the positron keep on losing energy. And by the end of this track over here, we can see at this position the positron has lost all of its kinetic energy, and it's now coming to stop. So the moment it comes to stop, it combines with an electron and goes through an annihilation interaction and produces two high energy gamma ray photons, which we call as annihilation. So for the first phase of positron interaction with the matter is about ionization, and second phase is about annihilation. And post annihilation it produces two high energy gamma ray photons, which are very critical for positron emission tomography, and the PET scanner detects these particular photons for the reconstruction of these medical image, which is in 3D MIP image of the biodistribution of F18 FDG pharmaceutical. Fine. So why is it called as positron emission tomography? Because the nucleate that is being used in PET have to be positron emitting radionuclide, for example F18 emission, because the patient's body emits the positron, and tomography, whatever image we are getting, these are tomographic images. That's why the name called is positron emission tomography, and that's the normal medical image of these F18 FDG biodistribution. And you can see these are the physiological uptake of this glucose over here, and these are the amount of radiation dose absorbed by the given organ of choice. For example, for brain, the absorbed radiation dose is in the range of 10 to 36 milligray. For heart, these are in this range. For kidneys, these are in this range. So during a normal diagnostic PET procedures, your normal organs receive a defined absorbed radiation dose. So that's the work done by this group of people named as F18 induced DNA damage, chromosomal aberrations, and toxicity in V79 lung fibroblast cells. So what are these V79 lung fibroblast cells? So these cells are widely used in the studies of DNA damage and DNA repair. And these are the methods employed by the researcher for getting to a conclusion. So the first step is about cell culturing. So these cells were cultured under ideal conditions, and post culturing these cells were irradiated by F18 FDG in cold buffered condition, and post irradiation for a defined time period the absorbed radiation dose was being calculated, and it was found that 14.51 and 26.86 milligray of absorbed radiation dose was absorbed by the cell cultured cells post irradiation, and these are the amount of absorbed radiation dose received by our critical organs during PET procedures. These doses are comparable to the dose received by our critical organs during PET procedures. For example, in this case, you can see that our brain receives a range of 10 to 36 milligray post in during the PET procedure. For heart, it receives a radiation dose of 16 to 51 milligray, and so on and so forth. So these doses are comparable to the radiation dose received by our critical organs during PET procedures. Now once the cell has absorbed a defined radiation dose, so these radiation dose will cause change in cell functioning, changes in some parameters. So we have to measure those parameters to implicate what effect these radiation dose have on the cell. So for example, this radiation dose can lead to changes in DNA breaks, can lead to DNA breaks. This radiation dose can induce changes in mitochondrial functioning, can also lead to the chromosomal aberrations, and can also change the cell cycle perturbations. So these are different endpoints which are being measured by these assays or these methods over here. Fine. Now let us have a brief understanding of how these radiation cause damage to our cell. For example, that's an ionizing radiation, for example F18 FDG gamma rays over here. So when our cells, or when these cells get exposed to ionizing radiation, so what it does basically, it induces the radiolysis of water and producing the hydrogen radical and the hydroxyl radical, and these radicals are themselves so chemically reactive, and these in turn combine or recombine to produce a series of reactive combinations like the superoxide radical, like this peroxide radical, and these superoxide radical and peroxide radical, it produces the oxidative damage to the molecules within the cell, and because of this oxidative damage there are different molecular lesions like double strand breaks, mitochondrial functioning imbalance, and many more things. Now the first assay is about the gamma H2AX foci assay. So what this assay is all about? So this assay is being used for measuring DNA damage. So whenever there is a DNA damage, so one of the histone which we call as H2AX, which is a variant of histone H2A, it get phosphorylated by this group of enzymes, and these particular phosphorylated H2AX is being used as a marker for imaging the DNA damage. Fine. So there is a there is an antibody which is designed specifically for these phosphorylated H2AX tagged to a fluorochrome, which can be used in case of fluorescence imaging to measure the amount of foci of these H2AX phosphorylated one. So if you want more information regarding how DNA damage and repair is being governed, we can go and follow in my channel this video lecture on DNA damage and repair. Now coming back to our topic again. So we now know that there is a foci, or that is a gamma S2 foci being developed post DNA damage, and more preferentially double strand DNA damage. So in our control group of cells which has not been irradiated to any absorbed radiation dose, there is no foci seen over here. But as the radiation dose keep on increasing, we can see higher foci. These, each dot is a foci over here of the gamma S2AX. And why we call this gamma? Because these foci was first seen in those cells which are being exposed to gamma radiation. That's why we call this gamma S2AX foci AC. Now we can see over here that as the radiation dose keep on increasing, the mean gamma S2AX foci part cell keep on increasing. So for the control group, there was no such foci or very limited foci. But in case of cells exposed to radiation, there was more foci part cell. And if you go and check the foci size over here for control group of cell, as they have no foci, so the size tends to 0. But for groups of cell which are being exposed to different radiation dose, the foci size keep on increasing with increasing radiation dose. So what we can say, that as radiation dose or as absorbed radiation dose keep on increasing, the probability of DNA damage keep on increasing, as depicted by these two diagrams over here. With lower radiation dose, DNA damage was less. With higher radiation dose, the DNA damage was higher. So this gamma S2 foci is a measure of DNA damage, more specifically double strand DNA breaks which are being induced by the radiation, that is F18 FDG. Fine. So the next is about JC1 fluorescence imaging. So what is this JC1 fluorescence imaging all about? So these is being used for the measurement of mitochondrial membrane potential. So now let us have a brief understanding of what we mean by the term called as mitochondrial membrane potential. So that's how our mitochondria looks like. So that's our outer membrane, that's our inner membrane space, and that's the matrix over here. And this inner membrane space has a higher proportions of proton, or a higher concentration of protons, and this matrix has a lower concentration of these protons over here. Fine. So there is a polarity between these two over here. So it has more portions of it has more protons, and it has less protons. So there is a polarity over here. And one more thing is that as these particular membrane is not permeable to this proton, so the protons cannot come to the matrix through these membrane. Rather, it needs a channel to come to the matrix side, and it comes to the matrix side by means of a special protein which we call as ATP synthase. So when these protons from this intermembrane space comes to the matrix through this particular ATP synthase, it leads to the production of ATP, and that ATP is very critical for cellular function and many other roles of cell. So for a healthy cell, it has a higher transmembrane potential, and it is more polar in nature. It has higher polarity. But because of some of the factors, these particular membrane can get ruptured, and one of the reason for membrane rupture is because of any oxidative damage by radiation or anything else. So as because these our cells are being exposed to absorbed radiation dose, so what it does basically, it induces oxidative damage to the cell, and because of this damage there is pore formation in these particular membrane over here, and the protons can now move from this inner membrane space of the matrix through the pore itself. They don't need this ATP synthase. So what they are doing basically, they are reducing the transmembrane potential. So in case of a unhealthy cell which has been exposed to radiation, the transmembrane potential keep on decreasing, and if this membrane potential keep on decreasing, so the ATP production also keep on decreasing. For a healthy cell, it has higher transmembrane potential and higher production of ATP, and for a unhealthy cell, it has lower transmembrane potential and lower ATP production. So now these particular phenomena can be imaged by means of fluorescence imaging by using a dye called as JC1. So what this dye basically does, let us have a brief understanding. So the JC1 enters the healthy mitochondria, which is a high membrane potential, and once entering, it makes a polymer which we call as JC1 polymer or J aggregates, and it fluoresces in red color. So healthy cells will appear red, healthy mitochondria will appear red in color, but these JC1, it enters the mitochondria, but it does not make a polymer in case of a low membrane potential mitochondria, and it fluoresces in green. So by means of this color discrimination, we can now say how much fraction of cells are healthy, how much fraction of cells are not healthy. Now moving back to this picture over here, that's our control group of cell over here. We can now see we have more red fluorescence cells over here, which means that these are the healthy cells. But as our cells are being exposed to radiation dose, we can now see these are the fractions of cell which are green. It means they are depolarized. They don't have polarity between the membranes. So they have reduced transmembrane potential. And in this group of cell, you can see higher fraction of the green cells. It means they are not healthy cells. They have lower transmembrane potential and they are depolarized more. So they are far more lower transmembrane potential. So what we can say basically, as the absorbed radiation dose keep on increasing, the fraction of cell depolarized also keep on increasing, as evident from here, as you can see over here, and the difference between these two groups are also valid statistically. Now the next is about karyotype analysis of the chromosomes. So that's the metaphase chromosome which are being stained by GIMSA of the non-irradiated V79 lung fibroblast cells, and these V79 lung and these particular cells have 11 pair of presentation of chromosomes. So these are the normal cells without any aberration. But once these group of cells are being exposed to radiation, there develops chromosomal aberrations, and which we can see over here that there are chromatid breaks, there are formation of dicentric formation, there are translocation, there are terminal break over here, and also formation of ring-like structure. So these are the aberrations which we can see from these metaphase chromosome. So when the cells get exposed to radiation because of this oxidative damage caused by radiation, there develops multiple chromosome aberrations too. And next is about the flow cytometric analysis of the cell cycle perturbations. So in these, so what these graphs are all about. So the graphs are the frequency histogram showing the DNA content distribution. So in this case, we can see these group of control cells have higher fractions of DNA in G0, G1 phase, and also significant proportions of cells in S phase and G2M phase. But as these cells are exposed to radiation sources, absorbed radiation doses, so the fractions of cells in this S phase and the G2M phase also keep on decreasing, and more decreases as the radiation dose keep on increasing. So now what we can understand from this graph, we can now see that the entries of the cell into S phase and the G2M phase were delayed by irradiation, and it has also caused a severe reduction in the mitotic movement. And that's what we can understand from this flow cytometric analysis and cell cycle distribution, that there is a reduction in the mitotic movement as we have lesser fraction of DNA in the S phase and G2M phase post irradiation. Finally, it is being done by means of last is about the DNA index analysis, and we can see over here as the radiation dose keep on increasing, the DNA index value keep on increasing further, and this increasing DNA indices depicts that aneuploidy increases post gamma ray irradiation and due to the effects of DNA damage. So as radiation dose keep on increasing, there is higher fraction of cell, there are higher chances of aneuploidy which are keep on increasing post this gamma ray irradiation. And these are the discussion which you can have over here, that organs which have higher metabolic energy requirements have higher radiation doses, and even a single unrepaired double strand breakage can cause chromosomal aberrations, apoptosis and mutation. And we can see in case of gamma ray foci assay that with higher radiation dose we can see higher foci formation, and the irradiated samples shows a lower transmembrane potential or having a higher fraction of cell in depolarized state, and there are significant chromosomal and chromatid aberrations which are being seen in the study. And one more thing is that the entries of cell into the S phase and the G2M phase were delayed, and it caused a severe reduction in the mitotic movement. And now we can have a concluding remark that whatever results we have got so far, it indicates that F18 FSG induces the DNA double strand breaks, chromosomal aberrations, and cytotoxicity also. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching this video. This video is aimed for making the basics for the budding researchers, and please give your comment below and help us in improving more. And thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe and keep watching. Thank you.